Aaron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron?
You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is back. Guys, I didn't intentionally take a break for 3 days from doing videos. It was an unintentional byproduct of other plans. I've been out of town for the last 3 days. I got on an airplane Friday evening. I came back super late last night. I was trying to keep it a bit low key. I was even planning on doing some videos while I was out of town, and that decision was made for me when I realized on the way to the airport that I left my microphone at home. You guys know I ain't doing no videos without a microphone. So anyway, that's why I've been gone for a few days. Didn't realize it would be such a big deal. So, okay, let's get down to the point of this video. I need your guys' help. Now, this is a request for information that should be very valuable and very helpful for all of the lawsuits that are ongoing against David Miscavige and Scientology that have any component of religious arbitration, that have any component where Scientology is trying to force the lawsuit into religious arbitration, or even some of the ones where Scientology has already succeeded in doing that. Valerie Haney's lawsuit, for example, was derailed into religious arbitration, and last week or 2 weeks ago, she completed part of it. I'm guessing perhaps her lawyers are going to try to get it pulled back into the courts. I don't know. It would make sense. But someone reminded me recently that Scientology, I'm going to try to keep my thoughts organized well here, guys. Scientology counts on the fact and really takes advantage of the fact that the courts don't know shit about Scientology and pretty much have to take Scientology's word for what Scientologists actually believe, what L. Ron Hubbard policy says. The courts aren't allowed to try to interpret L. Ron Hubbard policy. That's an overstep for them. And yet what the court may be allowed to do is examine Scientology's own contradictions about what they claim L. Ron Hubbard policy says. And I'll get right to the point. This request for help, okay, if you're someone who's never been in Scientology and you don't know anyone who's never been in Scientology, unfortunately, this request for help does not apply to you. But please feel free to stick around if you want to hear some interesting stuff. This request for help is for current Scientologists, under the radar Scientologists, former Scientologists. There was a time, what's been reported to me is that there is a time when Scientology officially canceled its own internal WISE arbitration proceedings. And I'll explain WISE in a second. And in the issue canceling it, explained that the reason they were canceling this arbitration procedure is because L. Ron Hubbard never wrote anything about arbitration, and that this arbitration procedure was not based on anything L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, had ever written. Therefore, it was deemed squirrel, an alteration of standard Scientology, and was canceled. That's kind of a big deal. That's kind of a big deal. Now, it's already been reported by Mike Rinder and others who know that this entire concept of internal religious arbitration was really just something invented by David Miscavige and the Office of Special and Mike Rinder and the Office of Special Affairs to serve as a hurdle to lawsuits, to stifle lawsuits, to get lawsuits thrown out, and that it's all there's no such thing as Scientology internal religious arbitration. It was just invented so that it could be put into a contract. Scientologists know L. Ron Hubbard never wrote a word about this, but the courts don't know that. And when Scientology had to hold its first ever religious arbitration just a few years ago in the Luis Garcia lawsuit, Scientology told the courts that the procedure for Scientology's religious arbitration was based on L. Ron Hubbard's policy letters about committees of evidence. Now, Mike Rinder, Mark Headley, and Claire Headley did a fantastic video yesterday evening breaking down a committee of evidence issue and showing how and the committee of evidence policy letter, and showing how even based on Scientology's own policies, Scientology's quote unquote religious arbitration doesn't follow the policies. But again, this gets into details that courts aren't allowed to go that deep into the weeds. But if there's an issue, if someone can put their hands on the issue that Scientology issued, canceling Wise internal arbitration because it was off source, off policy, not based on anything L. Ron Hubbard ever wrote, that is something I believe could be submitted to judges to go, guys, these are just making, judge, these guys are just making it up. These guys are just making it up. And you don't have to take my word for it. Take their word for it. Here they are telling their own members there's no such thing as arbitration. Now, when this was brought to my attention, I was a little confused because I myself, when I left the Sea Org in 2006, the first company I went to work for was one of these Scientologist owned and run business consulting groups that are really front groups to recruit small private practice owners, wealthy but relatively small private practice owners into Scientology. And it was called Measurable Solutions, and it's located here in Clearwater, Florida. And I was one of their business consultants. They just use L. Ron Hubbard administrative policies for their business consulting. So even though I didn't go to high school and I was raised in a cult, just so happens I know more than your average bear about those policy letters, and that's all these consulting companies care about. I parted terms with that company on less than favorable terms, and I took them to Wise arbitration, and I won, and they had to pay me some money. And so when I heard that Wise arbitration was canceled, I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I went through that process, and they go, no, that's a different process. That's a different thing. What you went through in, that would have been maybe 2007, 2008-ish, maybe 2007. That was different. Wise arbitration used to be a whole thing, much more similar to a committee of evidence, just like Scientology is now claiming their internal religious arbitration is based on the committee of evidence policy letter. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I'm like, when I did the Wise arbitration, I don't even think I even met in person. The person asked me, was there a panel? Did you meet with a panel of people? I was like, no. It was just one person. I think it was I want to say Kay Champagne, but I might have that wrong. I said, whoever was the head of the Wise Charter Committee for Clearwater was like the chairman of this thing. And they go, well, chairman or just a single person? I'm like, no, just a single person. You're right. There was no committee. There was no committee whatsoever. It was just an arbiter. It was an arbiter. This person was serving as an arbiter, a single person making a decision, not a panel, not a committee, not like a committees of evidence, not like a Scientology internal arbitration. I was like, oh, interesting. So Scientology, I said I would define WISE. WISE stands for World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. And it is an organization, I like to call it a front group because that's really what it is, but it's an organization underneath the Church of Scientology International, where it basically secularizes L. Ron Hubbard's administrative technology, what Scientologists would call the admin tech or the management tech. And it takes the information contained in these Scientology policy letters, and it repackages them into these course packs, where as much of the Scientology words, as much of the specialized nomenclature are taken out, are taken out as possible. There's still a bunch of Scientology words in there. But the purpose of these course packs is to be able to sell these course packs, to have non-Scientologists do these course packs and be able to tell them you're not really studying Scientology, you're studying just the management technology. And that's what WISE is. Now, when all Scientologist business owners are required to become members of WISE, a WISE member. One of the things you promise as a WISE member to never do is to never sue another Scientologist over business affairs. So there's a recognition that business affairs should be kept off of Scientology's lines, off of the org's lines. And it's almost like WISE was set up to keep business people from dragging their bullshit into the Scientology orgs. And so these WISE committees and these WISE charter committees and these WISE arbitrations were all set up so that Scientologists wouldn't have to take people to court, or because they're not allowed to take people to court, but they also wouldn't be allowed to drag their bullshit into the org. So the people that run these WISE charter committees, they're not staff members. They're not Sea Org members. They're public Scientologists. Public Scientologists are the ones who pay money to do Scientology. They don't work for Scientology. They don't sign contracts. They're not Sea Org members, all this kind of stuff. And so even for their own, and this is what's interesting to me, because WISE is technically like, it's Scientology, but in some ways it's Scientology adjacent. I mean, it's not really adjacent, but they want it to look like it is. In some ways, that should give them the latitude and the flexibility to do whatever the hell they want. They can, and by the way, WISE International is run by Sea Org members. So there's no question this, when I say Scientology adjacent, I say that with like a wink, wink. Like, it's Scientology, don't get me wrong. But because they have this thing, they're trying to make it seem like, well, it's Scientology, but it's not really. They should be able to be like, we can do arbitration however the hell we want to do arbitration. Because we're the purpose of what we're doing is to keep things off of the orgs, not to keep it married to the org. And yet even WISE canceled their internal arbitration because they admitted it was not in accordance with anything L. Ron Hubbard had ever written. So, guys, I'm being a little long-winded about this, but you guys know that's my specialty. If anyone out there, and I mean anyone who's ever had anything to do with Scientology or is in touch with staff members or former staff members or former Sea Org members or Sea Org members, just please ask around. All Scientologists in the world are connected by like 2 degrees of separation. Just please ask around. Does anyone remember WISE canceling its internal arbitration? And usually these cancellations occur in writing. So I'm told there's an issue that exists, something printed words on a physical page. Does anyone remember this? Is there anyone who can just even speak to me about it? Their specific memories about it. And the real golden nugget here would be, can anybody put their hands on the issue, no matter what type of issue it is, canceling WISE arbitration? This issue would probably be the one that explains what the new process is and why the new process had to be created, and what policies were being violated with the old process, and what policies the new process is based on, and all this kind of stuff. That's it, guys. That's my request. Guys, it is going to be a packed day of SPTV. I have a live interview coming up in a few hours with Priscilla Presley's son, Lisa Marie Presley's brother. That should be wild. I'm doing a fun little Halloween stream with Reese here shortly. And then I got another fun little stream happening later this evening. So stay tuned for all of that. All right, guys, short and sweet, or as short and sweet as I can make it. Thank you guys for hanging out with me this afternoon. Stay tuned for much more. Guys, please check that subscribe button. Channels across YouTube are continuing to say that their viewers are being auto unsubscribed. So check that subscribe button. All right, guys, stay tuned for so much more. Talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click wow.